today we have Justin Dell. I'm just going to introduce you. One of our associate attorneys. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Of course. And if you're a regular on our Talk Tuesday, then you've probably seen her before on our Meet Our Associates. So tell me, ladies, has anybody had any issues relative to COVID and vacation this summer yet?
I had an issue come up in one of my cases, really just where a client had reached out to me. She was planning a possible trip to Georgia and was asking me about the repercussions, what I thought if I thought that there would be restrictions that could come down and things like that. It had become an issue with her ex because initially he had said, yeah, you can go. And then as things kind of started to ramp up over the last month, he had changed his mind. So she really wondered, is this something that could land me in court or not? I mean, ultimately, my suggestion was just to skip the trip because it didn't seem worth it to potentially end up in court on an emergency, which is what her ex was intimating. But it had been a real back and forth between them in terms of both of them had been keeping kind of a close eye on each other in terms of, are you social distancing enough? What kind of travel are you doing? And sort of keeping tabs on each other.
Yeah. I mean, I know early on in this, a lot of the judges, like as we moved into phase, I think it was 3, where people started to relax restrictions a little bit. I had numerous issues that came up in front of judges about travel, and some of the judges were saying you can't go.
Yeah.
Have you been seeing that lately at all? Have you had that at all, I guess?
I personally haven't, but I also really haven't had clients reach out to me about traveling. Other than this one case. And really a lot of my recommendation there was that she was looking to go to the South, where that state and all the surrounding states had become cautionary states.
Right.
And but it hasn't been too much of an issue. I think most of my clients seem to be staying home, as do their exes.
I know I am.
Yeah,
Jim, what about
too.
you? Have you had anything come up relative to this topic lately?
Yeah, I have. I have it come up quite a bit, particularly recently when there's that 14-day quarantine if you're coming back from a specific state.
Exactly.
Yeah, so it becomes like a conundrum. If I want to take my kids to Florida, which is a whole nother question. The second question is, well, when you come back, then where do you quarantine for 14 days? So a week-long vacation can turn into a 3-week, what do I do?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then
oh, sorry.
Oh, no, I was going to say, it seems like then there's also the issue of if you take the kids and you have to quarantine, what do you do about that? Are they quarantining with you and then you're not exchanging them for parenting time? Is the other parent going to insist that they come with them and you don't see your kids for 2 weeks? I mean, all of that's kind of a gray area as well.
And I'll tell you, I've seen some situations with like international travel where people have left and then they can't get back, right? Because things are starting to rev up again in certain places, and you can't necessarily guarantee that someone's going to be able to get on a flight and get back here.
Sure.
One of the things that also kind of concerned me when I advise my clients about this is, if you contract it, like, and you're down in another state or up in another state, and you've got your kids with you and you contract it, nobody else is with you, what are you going to do? Right. Like, what if you're in the hospital? How's your kid going to get home? What's going to happen? Is someone else going to have to go get that? I mean, there's so many what ifs. But I have seen some judges allow flights too on the other side of the coin. So I think it really is dependent upon where you're traveling. Would you agree?
Yeah. And it seems like it also depends a lot on whether the travel has anything to do with a parenting order or not. If it's just a vacation for fun, then I think you're less likely to be able to get that approval versus this is the trip that's actually in our parenting agreement or something like that.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And then you got to take into consideration the cost that's going to be associated with it, because there's going to be a motion filed. So
Sure.
Not only do you have 2 people disagreeing about a vacation, But, what are the judges doing? If it's not against your parenting agreement or your allocation judgment, and it's really just something that's situational based on COVID-19, I mean, it's a cost you're going to have to bear if you want to get prepared for that. So, again, I'm just going to say the best case scenario is hopefully you guys can work it out. And maybe in mediation, maybe you could talk it through some safety precautions, talk through some guidelines, and that's the best way to handle it. Have you had to send anything to mediation, Jess, on this issue?
I haven't, no. I mean, thus far, generally people have either been able to sort of work it out between themselves, or they've just decided to drop it. I mean, hearing from an attorney, this may result in an emergency motion and everything seems to be a pretty big deterrent. But I haven't actually had it escalate to the point where anybody felt like they needed to mediate it. Usually they seem to say, okay, I'll go next summer if that's what it takes.
Yeah, most people, I think, are delaying travel, particularly flight travel. What about if it's a road trip? Is there any been issues with any road trips?
Well, I mean, my thought is if there's a safer way to drive, it's got to be, or a safer way to travel, it's got to be to drive. But I think a lot of it really has to do on where you're going and where you're stopping along the way. I mean, that would be my bigger concern if I was presented with a parent who is, wanting to vacation is, well, where are you going? And is that a hot spot that really is seeing a lot of activity that carries a real risk? Is it one of the states that Cook County is now saying you need to quarantine from and things like that? And just knowing that even though there's less exposure theoretically through driving, you're still exposed every time you stop at a gas station or a restaurant. And depending on who you're staying with, if you're at a hotel or with family, there's exposure risk there too.
I've seen some judges opine a little bit on the driving trips, and it seems like they're more open to that than the flying, like you had mentioned. And it really does come down to the exposure and where you're going. I mean, if somebody wants to go camping and it's completely isolated, especially sites where there's like not bathrooms or anything, not my idea of a vacation, although maybe at this point it might be, but that's some people's jam. And if they're not going to see anyone or touch anything and they're bringing their own stuff, I can't really see a judge objecting to that. What do you think?
Yeah, and I think the other thing is there's other things to do. What they call them staycations, maybe. There's other fun things that you can do without having to take your child someplace. And I know, Jessica, you've got little kids. Both of you Jessicas have little kids. I'm sure you've become creative on what do you do for your vacation time.
Oh, yeah. Well, I can attest to the fact that kids touch everything. They touch everything, especially when they're, under 5. And so taking them somewhere where there's any sort of exposure for me is just like, we're staycation it is. I know one day we went to a very secluded area of a local beach where there really wasn't anybody. And then we came home and made beach desserts with like graham cracker crumbs and little gummy fishes and pudding. And that was Camp Mommy for the day, beach day. We had a theme. But
so that's a fun idea. You could do things in your backyard. You could even pitch a tent, right? Maybe go on a little camping trip in your backyard.
Right.
But summer travel is certainly an issue. And even if the courts say, under your agreement, you can go, it's really a decision of whether or not you want to go. And we got a case now where someone had traveled internationally, and that was back in January with a little 5-year-old. They're still gone because who wants to come to the USA right now?
Yeah.
And that's a long time to be gone.
Right. And I think in that situation, we actually had to have experts come and testify about like the air quality on airplanes and all kinds of stuff, like expense that you can't even, it's beyond just paying attorneys at that point. Because the judges don't know. They're just people. This is new to everybody. It's uncharted territory. And you've got to, do a good job and the best job you can for your client. And sometimes that means bringing in an expert. But I'll tell you what I think we're going to start seeing more and more now that we're starting to get back into what back to school plans are going to be. There are schools that are going to go back in person. And at that point, I could envision a situation where a parent wants to travel with kids somewhere where they have to quarantine when they get back. And it's going to run into when school starts because you're not used to planning for a 14-day in between. So I could see that issue coming up too. It's something to be careful of if you are planning to go anywhere.
Do you think school's going to be in session in person? You think that's coming this fall?
I know in some states they've announced hybrid plans, and I think CPS actually said that they're going to do something like 2 days in person, 3 days virtual, like a hybrid situation where there would be some in-person time, but they have a lot of students who really rely on the resources at school. You know, there's some areas that are a little bit more affluent that don't necessarily have the same extent of kids relying on food from school and daycare from school. So I think it's a possibility. I've also seen some schools have said we're going to start 3 weeks later because they're still trying to figure it out. But it's every area is kind of doing their own thing right now. I don't know. Jess, have you heard anything?
Beyond what's been announced for CPS, I haven't heard very much. And I know Evanston did announce that they're not going to have anything in person. So I know that those are two things that are being figured out. My husband's actually a professor at Northwestern, and they're still trying to figure out exactly what they're doing in terms of how much is going to be in person, how much is going to be remote. They're operating on sort of that hybrid system. So across the board, schools are really having a hard time figuring out what to do. And my daughter has actually returned to preschool, which was something we really wondered a lot about doing. And it's a very limited class size, lots of restrictions on cleaning and who's around them, and parents can't go in the building and things like that. And we ended up feeling like that was the best thing for her at this point, to not be in the house all day, every day while we were working. But it's really challenging, and it's scary. You know, it's scary not, hoping that everybody is being smart and careful about their travel and about their health, but not totally knowing that. I know for us, we feel like the exchanges, we're not really doing much of anything outside of our house and our general neighborhood to help really reduce any risk that we might bring to the other kids and the other family. That was for us, I think, the trade-off. And it feels like a fair one, but you just don't know with schools how seriously parents and kids are going to be taking those mandates and those recommendations.
Yeah, that's the thing, is you're counting on not only your safety, but what's everybody else doing. So this is really a nationwide issue, and people need to listen. People need to listen and be. It's not going away.
No.
Yeah. Right.
No.
Well, there's I know like my kids' preschool does a daily certification before you go in, or at least they plan to, and they've been doing it with a camp. We haven't done anything yet, but you have to certify that you don't have any of a list of symptoms, that the child's temperature is normal, and then they ask about like where you've been since yesterday. You have to sign off on it before they can even enter the building.
Yep. When we drop our daughter off, we get our temperatures checked, and we get asked a range of questions. And if there's any indication of sickness or concern about anybody in our family, she's not supposed to go that day.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting because there was like a policy for one of the schools I was reading where they said if a child has symptoms or exposure, they have to quarantine for a certain amount of time. But it didn't talk about family members. It didn't say anything about like if a parent has exposure or if a parent tests positive. It was like only limited to the child. And I wondered if there was a legal reason for it. But, you just hope everyone's going to do the right thing.
Yeah, I can say at our school, they ask about all of us. If anybody in the household has had any of these symptoms or any of these issues. And so I think even if the parent who was there and the child was there didn't have them, we'd still be told we needed to go home.
Yeah.
Which I think is exactly right.
Yeah.
I think absolutely.
We do have a couple of questions. So the first one is, are you seeing parents disagree with returning to school? And also piling on that, what if one parent disagrees with in-person versus virtual? So has anyone had this?
Yeah, I haven't had it come up, but I anticipate it's coming.
Oh, for sure.
As the schools announce what they're going to do. Have you had it, Jan?
Yeah, I'm dealing with that, and it's an older student. It's a student that's a high school student, and we have one parent that's uberly cautious, and the other parent is counting on and trusting that the school is going to do everything needed to get the kids back in school and be safe. So I think the older the kids get and they're getting closer to college prep, I think it's a really tough decision. But if schools are open, I mean, I don't know what the options are for parents. Can I just say, no, I'm not sending them, I'm just going to homeschool them? I think now there's people talking about just hiring the teacher to come to your house.
I've heard that too.
Yeah, and
Using a pod.
yeah, and
Yeah.
the other thing that I'm a child rep in a case, and what I didn't even realize it till I was dealing with this particular case, is that they have 3 children, and they don't have there's not a lot of income or welfare. There's 3 kids now needed to do e-learning with 1 computer. How the heck? How does that work? You can't all be online with your teachers at 8 or 9 or 10 o'clock. So that's another struggle, like you said, Jessica, with the socioeconomic areas that really depend on a lot of these services. So
Yeah.
1 computer for 3 kids trying to get their schoolwork done has been a real challenge for them.
Yeah. I had heard also that there were some schools that were opening for the purpose of children that like need internet access or need meals, and like they open to the kids that have a need, but basically the ones that have the luxury of being home stay home. So I mean, there's no right answer. And I actually, somebody was posting somewhere, I'm always on social media looking at things while I'm waiting and all that fun stuff, but somebody had posted, can we practice this? If you're sending your kid back to school in person, wow, I'm proud of you. That was a really tough decision. If you're keeping your kid home, practicing, wow, I'm proud of you. That must have been a really tough decision. And just be supportive, because everybody's in a different spot,
You do have to be supportive, but then I wonder about the teachers. How do you teach partly online, partly in class? You just can't do it all that.
Yeah.
So although I get the struggle with the parents, I appreciate the struggle with the parents. I don't know what I would do if I had a child that had to go to 1st or 2nd grade, had to go to school. I'm not in that position. I have grandkids who are in Arizona, like a hotbed area. They're both in high school. And so I don't know if they're going to go to high school or not. Of course, not my decision, but it's a tough one.
Yeah. In college too, I'm hearing if all the classes are online, are you still sending your kid to live in a dorm? Like, if they can't leave or do anything, I don't know.
I have a college issue right now, and the son's going away to college, and you bet he's packing his bags and he's going away. They want to be normal. They want to get back to normal, and they want to be in the dorms, even though everything is happening online. That's not the biggest part of college, right? The biggest part of college has to do with the social aspect, and so the parents are struggling there too. Can you do your classes online? Why would I send you to live in a dorm? I don't know the right answer, but hopefully the parents can work that out.
We have another question too. How about kids going to baseball games, soccer games, summer activities, or getting the children out of the house? How are people handling those scenarios? Anyone?
Are there soccer games going on right now? Are there sporting activities?
I think there's some. I think there's some little league and soccer leagues and stuff that are playing. I think it really depends on where you live and what people are doing around you.
Well, I guess if you're going to be outside at an event, you just have to sit 6 feet apart, bring your own chair, wear a mask for if when it's needed. I think masks have been proven to be very helpful. Fresh air is good.
I think the difficulty is what Jessica mentioned before, that it's just so hard to get kids to social distance or, keep their I mean, it's such a challenge, especially the smaller they are. So then if you have kids playing sports and playing on teams, they're going to be close to each other and they're going to have a hard time separating. Sometimes the sport, like soccer or something, requires them to get close to each other. So I think the parents just have to decide whether they think that that's a risk that they're willing to take or whether they think this is a season they're going to sit out.
Yeah, I haven't had too much fighting about it, but it might just be that the parents are aligning, right?
I haven't seen it either, and I was just assuming that these activities weren't taking place.
Well, they are.
Yeah.
We talked about baseball because I know baseball in our town is taking place, and the people that have decided to do it, I guess their logic is we're going to be locked up again soon. So we may as well get the kids out of the house. It's outside, and You know, I guess they sit 6 feet apart when they're in line to bat. I have no idea. I don't know, but
they're touching the
those
same
sporting
bat.
conditions. I
I've
don't
read actually that some of them you have to bring your own equipment. That's one of the things that they're doing. So if you're playing baseball, you're bringing your own bat. You definitely have all your own equipment, so you're not sharing anything. And that's part of what they're trying to do. And that, yeah, if they're in the dugout, I guess they're all 6 feet apart, and that's part of how they're trying to keep distance as well.
I saw a meme the other day, and it was I forget who it was, but he said, "Thank you for the plastic partition protecting me from the cashier who has just touched everything I'm taking home with me."
Right. I know. Oh, I can't even imagine. What about the other side of it? The cashier who touched everything that 18 people before you touched, and then everything that you touched, like all the touching. My friends and I, we like laugh now. We went to brunch in February, I think it was, and we were at a buffet, and it's like the funniest thing to us now. We're like, do you know
I know.
touched?
I'm not sure they're going to survive this.
Right.
I don't know that we'll have them on the other side. But yeah, it always feels like, you know, in terms of going somewhere, you think about, okay, well, if I go later in the day, how many people have been here before me? Like, how many other exposures has the person that I'm dealing with had? Getting a haircut, things like that.
Yeah. It's a whole different ball game.
You know, that's one thing you bring up that I haven't had any parents call me about. Should I let my little kid go get a haircut? I've not had that issue.
I
think they all agree they should cut the hair.
Or do a home haircut. That's what we do. We just do home bang trims at my house.
My sister does hair, so I've been very fortunate. And she lives alone, so throughout this whole thing, she was kind of quarantining with us at the beginning a little bit. She'd bring her shears over and cut our hair. But I don't know. It's crazy.
Yeah, I know. And it's just like, if you keep your circle, like they say, you know, a circle of 10 people, but then what about the 10 people that the people in your circle have in their circle? So I don't understand really, you know, how that all ends or what the best situation is. But yeah, being outside is a good thing if you want to see people. I've seen friends get together, like pull up their SUVs and pop their hatchbacks and sit on the back of their SUVs and talk with each other, which sounds like a really nice afternoon. But if you bring your kids with you, that's not going to work, because they're going to want to touch things and run around.
Right. Well, Kid Snips, it's like a museum in there. Everything's colorful. And they've got like the toys on the shelf. You know, it's just, I don't know, bad news. Maybe they're doing them outside. Who knows? But I think a lot of people are getting people to come to their house and help if they can't cut hair or do nails. There's people that have quit their jobs and they just go to houses now because they don't want the exposure either. You know, and I guess if they figure I'm going to people's houses because those people don't want to go out, those people must be pretty low risk too in terms of contracting. But
you mentioned that you had people thinking we're going to be shut down again. Do you think we're going to have another stay-at-home order?
I don't know. I have no idea. I mean, I think that just given what happens in the fall in general, usually that's, you know, it's flu season and you start to contract and the weather gets bad, but how much of that is because everyone's getting together, right? I mean, if you can't go to kids' museums and sporting events and concerts and dinner and you can't do those things, I'm not sure how much is going to get passed around. I guess I don't understand the science behind it all that well. But if it were a regular flu season, for sure, I think that there's going to be something where people are leaving less. I mean, even Chicago, I think I saw yesterday, they've started to tighten the reins on indoor bars have to be closed now. Only outdoor can be open as of the 24th. And I can't remember what else they're doing, but the mayor's starting to tighten up some of the rules there. So
yeah, we had to see the numbers increase based on the exposure that was allowed during the phase, the most recent phase. Too many people are getting together.
Yeah, I'm just sort of planning on it happening so that if it doesn't happen, that it's like a happy surprise. And otherwise it's like we're ready for it. But I know my husband got an email or something from his barber saying, come in, by July 25th, otherwise we're shutting back down. So I anticipate here in Chicago, we're going to go backwards. They've been very stringent, which I appreciate. But I think once they opened up indoor dining and bars, we started to see numbers really increase, to see problems.
The meme I saw about that said we drank away our kids' futures. I don't know. I think that might be a little harsh, but because everybody was like going out and doing all these things, and now the schools allegedly will be closed.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think if we take a lesson from the 1918, 1919 flu, I mean, it lasted about a year and a half before they were able to get it under control. So I don't know why this would be any different. So I agree with you. I think we're probably going to see another stay-at-home order. I think it's going to be just as severe, and maybe this time people take it seriously.
Yeah. And I think we were doing, like, our state did well compared to other states. Like, we were the honor roll students. What happened?
Yeah.
I think comparatively, we're still doing really well. It's just that they are taking this very, very seriously. They're not going to let us get to the level of Florida or Texas or, other places that have seen huge growth in their numbers. I think they're just putting a cap on it really early to make sure we don't get there. But I think as soon as you let people get together to eat or to drink or whatever, you're just going to see numbers go up. And there are those people, especially over the summer, who aren't taking this seriously and are still having parties or going to parties or having other get-togethers,
Yeah.
It's a challenge. Well,
I just want to say hi. We have some people tuning in. Hi, Dinu. Hi, Sammy. Sammy said that he gives great in-home haircuts. We'll think of you. And we do have another question. They want to know, are divorce trials going on? I heard that you can get a divorce by mail these days. Is that true? Who wants that one? Jess, do you want to respond?
So I think it depends on what county you're in. If I'm trying to remember, there's one county, I believe it was DuPage County, where you can get a divorce via affidavit. And from what I read in the order, it sounded like you could do everything essentially via email or mail, and that they would finalize a divorce just with those signed affidavits, but they had a lot of requirements for it. Other counties that I'm practicing in, that I have divorce cases in, they're doing those hearings via Zoom. So I've had a couple of Zoom hearings in Cook County, and I've got one coming up in a couple of weeks in Lake County. And that's how they're handling it. They're doing it pretty much like they would normally do it, except we're just not in person. We're doing it over the computer, which for some of my clients has been really great. I had one client who, when we were talking about being stuck on travel, she was stuck in Saudi Arabia. She went to visit her family, couldn't fly back, was dealing with restrictions, but we were still able to finalize her divorce because she was able to just call in via Zoom. So that's actually been a nice advantage for some people. Yeah, but I think it just depends on your county. But I haven't seen that in Cook or Lake. I've seen them, be amenable to Zoom, but that's all.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because I feel like even just a couple of years ago, to find a mediator who could do things remotely for like parents who lived in different states, it was almost like if you live in different states, there's no point in doing anything jointly because mediating is so hard. You had to like find a mediator who could use something like Zoom. Now everybody's well-versed and knows how to use it. So, prove ups, mediation, all that stuff, it can happen electronically. The world has changed very quickly.
Yeah, I think there's really the potential for permanent change, which I think would be great. I mean, I always felt bad when I had out-of-state clients who had to fly in for a hearing, and it would be a major expense and a real issue for them in terms of taking off time from work and things like that. Like, there's no reason why they shouldn't be able to just participate via Zoom and save themselves that time and the expense.
Right. And you know what else has been fun? Like, we've done some consultations via Zoom, and one of them, somebody was in the Middle East, and I was like in awe of the person's house because for all I knew, they could have been in New York. Like, it just looked so similar to what it looks like here. And I'm so ignorant about like what houses look like in certain countries. And I was just so like, you look like you're in the same place as me. I can't believe you're in the middle of the Middle East and we're having this conversation. So I think that's cool. I think it's so cool. But we have one other.
Go ahead.
We have one other question. Can you ask a parent to restructure their vacation plans due to COVID to protect yourself and children from potential exposure? Can it impact parenting time, and what recourse do you have as a parent when the co-parent is less concerned about COVID? Hi, Kwame. It's a lot of questions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think we've addressed almost every one of those questions in our talk today. And everything can be restructured, everything can be worked around. You just have to have an agreement, or you have to talk it through. But both parents have the same goal, and that's keeping everybody safe, particularly the child.
And now would be a good time to also plug that if you missed the first half of this video, we do post the replays, so feel free to tune in and replay those and share them. And yeah,
we have all our Talk Tuesdays, not only on Facebook, but they're also on YouTube. And we've had a lot of good subjects that we've covered. And we've had a lot of great guests that have given us a lot of great insight and information. So yeah, please take a look at those and let us know if there's anything that we can help you with at Anderson and Boback. We're available, we're open, we're working hard. Jess, thank you so much for joining us this week.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. This has been really fun.
Yeah. All right.
Glad you said that.
Yeah. So we'll be back next week for another session of Talk Tuesday.
Sounds good.
Sounds great.
Thank you all for joining.
Yes, thank you. Bye.
Bye.